I was listening to you very closely. You said, you didn't say trench foot was a long time ago. You said World War I.
No, I
and
wasn't.
Yes, you did. You said World War I, World War II was a long time ago. That's literally what came out of your mouth.
And then I followed it up by saying the amount of men who have had trench foot in the last 20 years compared to the amount of women who have been pregnant in the last 20 years is not statistically significant enough to compare, which was the original argument.
But hold on.
The first half of that sentence was about World War I. The entire sentence included what we were discussing.
Okay, you realize trench foot, while there is to some degrees, like in the Ukraine war, there is some degree of like trench warfare. Trench warfare was like predominantly a World War I scenario, and to some degree in World War II. So you said, well, what about the trench foot the past 20 years? Not really a major concern when it comes to global conflict. You said World War I, World War II, long time ago. Okay, so just because something happened a long time ago doesn't mean that it doesn't have like lingering impacts. The whole world is completely different because of World War I and World War II.
Great. I agree.
Okay.
That
But
wasn't
you
what
said
we were discussing.
you were trying to like say, oh, well, these things happened a long time ago. Doesn't matter. That was your position.
No, that wasn't my position at all.
I mean, then why bring up, oh, because you're trying to downplay it. Why bring up that it happened so long ago?
Because that's...
Do you want a more recent example?
Sure.
Okay, the Ukrainian war, which is currently ongoing. All the women could leave the country. All the men had to stay. That seems like an injustice, doesn't it?
From a system that men set up.
What do you mean a system that men set up?
Who made rules of war? Men?
Humans? What does it have to do with men? Wait, hold on. Just to be clear. So if most people in power are men, but that only represents 0.00001% of the population,
then men deserve to die in war.
Men are only 0.01% of the population?
The men
in power, the kind of power that you're talking about.
How many Russian males are there versus how many Putins are there?
Right, but the system is still set up by men, and so you're complaining about a system.
How do you know it has to do with because they're men?
Because that is
they happen to be men.
If there was, can I just ask one question? If there was a system that was set up by men and exclusively by men that made men walk into a hole that was going to be to bury them and kill them, right? And they just were walking into there all day. A million of them died, but it was set up by men. Would it be unfair?
Okay. Is that unfair to men versus women? Is that
no,
your
but
argument?
would it be unfair to the men who that was happening to?
I mean, if they're dying, sure, it's unfair to anybody who dies.
So then it doesn't necessarily about if there's a guy in power who set it up.
No, I'm saying if you're complaining about rules that affect men, but the rules were set up by men, what do you expect? That's who set up it's not women being unfair to men and saying, let me make these rules to disqualify.
Actually, you know what? The funny thing is that men are
Hold on.
actually so benevolent when it comes to this sort of thing, because if they wanted to, they could conscript women and send them off to the front lines to die. But instead, you know what they send off? Other young men. Other 18, 19, 20-year-old young men to go die in the hundreds of thousands.
You're complaining about the system, but then you're justifying it.
What do you mean I'm justifying it? How am I justifying it?
You're saying that men do this.
No, I'm just talking about it from the female purview. From the female purview, you can say that it's all men who set it up, but also it's men who take all of the responsibility, and it's all men who are dying in it as well. They take all of the responsibility. They have all the duties when it comes to war.
Right, but that's the system that were complaining about 2 minutes ago, and I said, how are you complaining about it if men are the ones that set up the system?
Wait, just to be clear, do you think infinitely complex geopolitical conflicts, it all just boils down to, a man happened to be in position of power? Like
not.
if a bad thing happens, and it happens to be a man who was in a position of power, it's like somehow the men who are negatively impacted by that it's not as severe because a man in position of power.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Why don't we also why do we look at it in that way? Like, what are you trying to communicate by saying, well, who set that system up?
Well, because you were
are you victim blaming?
No, you're complaining about the system, but I'm saying that men set up that system. So if you're complaining about the system, that's what was set up by men.
I mean, this seems like to be a bit of a logical fallacy. What's your point?
I just said my point.
But so
times.
are you saying?
This is just.
I mean, but are you saying that the grievance is of less concern?
Somebody else something.
Oh, you're just going to disengage? I mean,
No,
you
I've said it several times, but you keep asking me the same
I'm
question,
not
hoping
asking-
that I'm getting a different
I'm
response.
not asking you
but
that.
I'm not doing that.
I've literally asked you a different question. Are you trying to suggest by pointing out, well, it happens to be a very small minority of men who had some degree of power, supposedly set the system up?
No,
Of course,
actually did
ignoring,
set the
well,
system
of
up.
course, ignoring certain biological and evolutionary realities. What are you ultimately trying to get to? That any grievance, if the grievance, this individual or group of people shares a gender, shares a sex with the individual or individuals that set that system up, their grievance should not be taken as seriously? Is that what you're getting at?
I've said several times that,
I mean, I'm asking you a different question.
but on the same topic, that if it's a man making a decision for men, then it shouldn't matter, is what you're saying?
I'm asking, maybe it doesn't matter as much. What are you trying to communicate by saying, but men set that system
Because
up?
men complain about the system that they themselves set up. So
Well,
if they didn't like the system, then why wouldn't they have changed it?
Hold on. So just to be clear, you think like 18-year-olds who are drafted into the military have like the political capital to change the system?
No, but the system was still set up by men.
And
Should they not complain?
They can complain.
Men can complain.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Do you think that warfare and conflict and tribalism is a part of human nature, or do you think that it's something that men do?
Warfare in general?
Warfare and tribalism.
I think it's human nature.
Right. So do you
Yeah.
think that if there were women in power, if we were just all of a sudden run by queens, even though they wouldn't be able to enforce anything, if we were run by queens, then do you think that there would be no war? It would be sort of John Lennon
No, I don't
seeing
think there would be
Imagine by
no
John
war,
Lennon
but
holding
I do
hands?
think that the way that men handle conflict versus the way that women handle conflict is very different. So I think if women were quote unquote running the road, there would be more communication and probably less casualty. But
Do you think that there would be less war if it was up to women?
Yes, I don't think war would be non-existent.
You
But
think
I
the
do
girls would
think-
just have a chai latte and just talk it out?
No, I didn't say that at all. There's two ends of the spectrum, but I do think women are more communicative and men are technically, usually, are more physical. So they handle conflicts more physically. Women usually handle conflicts with emotion and communication. You don't have to agree. I mean, that's just...
So, I mean, what's your prescription though? So you're saying, okay, men complain about war. Well, tough, because men set that system up. Like, what is your actual prescription?
exactly what I said.
I mean, I didn't really hear a prescription.
The women should run things. We should have a matriarch
say
and they'd
that.
all get together with the girls and have a chai latte and there'd
I
be
don't
no
know why
no
this is
fighting.
like so
think
hyper
she
focused
said
on me
that.
for every question,
Well,
though. It's
I
a little
mean-
bit strange.
It's because when we ask you to actually state your position, you just go, you like look around, give like weird face, and then say, "I already said that." You can just say it again, maybe in a more. Maybe we're too stupid to understand, so just
Could
say it
be.
in a
That's
more.
not true.
in a
I've
more
said the
clear
same thing
way.
on abortion several times, and it was just a runaround. I've said the same thing on this topic, and it's just a runaround. So we just
I mean,
don't
I'm
agree.
exploring your worldview. I'm not repeating
No.
questions.
No, you're speaking down on it, is what you're
How
doing.
am I speaking down on what? It seems like you're speaking down on us. You're
No.
dismissing genuine male grievances by simply saying, by using the apex fallacy, oh, this 0.0001% of men who do have power. Meanwhile, the average man has absolutely no power. In fact, the average man tends to fare worse than the average woman. And then if you look at the bottom rungs of society, most men occupy the absolute worst outcomes in society, whereas women in general tend to have like a higher standard of living, the average woman does, than the average man. So you might look at the man in the CEO or the executive or the really rich guy, and you think that that's the experience of most men or all men, but it's an apex fallacy. It's a very, very small percentage of men that enjoy any sort of supposed or alleged privilege. Most men live unremarkable lives. Most women average women compared to average men have far more privilege in a myriad of different ways.
We can agree to disagree.
I'm not going to agree to disagree. Explain to me the worst outcomes that women face as compared to the worst outcomes that men face. For example,
It's exhausting. I
Sure.
mean, it's just on me. Like, this is very strange. There are 6 other
Well,
people at the table.
if
You
any
can
of the
ask
other
them a
girls
question
want to
as well.
jump in with a like coherent argument, I'm happy to hear it. But so far, you're the only one that's biting. So that's what I have to go off of. When it comes to homelessness, for example, do you care to take a guess at the percentage breakdown of homelessness between men and women?
I think somebody else can take a guess.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you then. 80% of homeless are men. This, to me, seems like it would be a worse life outcome. So how do we reconcile this amazing privilege that is bestowed upon men? I assume you believe in the patriarchy. How could it be the case that there's this patriarchy that exalts and raises men up, and they have this fantastical privilege and their lives just go splendidly without any issue, but all of the worst negative life outcomes drastically, disproportionately impact men? I mean, do you just want to concede the argument? I'll move it on if you just want to concede. But
I've said this now the 4th time. Somebody else can talk. This is like the hyper focus is strange. Somebody else can bite.
Okay, what if they're not willing? I mean, I'm literally going off of your own positions. Because, okay, we are exploring your statement of who set that system up. So I'm exploring that worldview. That's why I'm talking to you. None of the other panelists forwarded that worldview. Is this the like healthy, you know what stonewalling is? Is this what you do in a relationship?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. I
But
mean,
I've
you're
said
doing it live
several
on stream.
Like, this is a boundary that I've said several times. Focus on somebody else.
You've agreed to come on like a discussion show.
Right, and I've explained my stance several times, and you're asking
I'm not asking you to repeat it. I've literally forwarded different questions and positions for you to like either try to rebut or contend with.
Can I add something?
I'd love that.
All right, I'm just gonna say she concedes the argument then. Go
Okay,
ahead.
well, so I wanted to add something because you can correct me too if I'm totally off or whatever, but I think where she was getting at with that comment was going back to earlier discussion about the abortions and how men shouldn't have a say-so on women's body, even though men passed that law to have a say-so on women's bodies, like them being able to have abortions. So moving like forward into this conversation, she's basically just like going back to that, like, well, men made those laws the same way, like we don't feel men should have a say-so on women's bodies and what women do.
Wait, hold on.
Something like that.
There's a massive amount of conservative women who are part of the electorate, and you have women on the Supreme Court, you have female politicians, senators, etc. Like, would you guys be okay? Like, let's assume, and actually I think there's more women voters than there are male voters. So if the majority of women voted to ban abortion, and if I said, you guys who are pro-choice, if I was like, oh, well, who set up that system?
Yeah,
There's
I
a
think that's
majority
exactly
of
where she
female
gets at.
voters.
Okay, and that's exactly where she was like going with the like war thing, and that's completely okay if you said that. Like, my standpoint is I'm a very different woman compared to the women that are on that panel. Like, I'm a minority, I'm younger, like these are like really old, like you said, like conservative white women who are making, like he said, there's a lot of not two-parent homes in the Black community. It's more known in that community than y'all's and stuff. So like for us, if we know this man is not going to stick around or do this, like, and we're like, oh, okay, I want to have an abortion so I don't raise my kid in a one person, household, maybe that's their standpoint. I'm not speaking for myself, but yeah, I don't know if you get that, but
can I just say,
confused.
can I add, if it was, the statistic was 50% men, 50% women homeless, would you guys be happy with that? No, you probably want the men lower and then the women higher.
I don't want anybody homeless.
Okay, good.
Yeah, me
It just
either.
feels like
But homelessness is there by their choice. There's like jobs, literally. There's homeless
What?
people. Like, what do you mean? Like, it's like
Homeless-
I
you
think
think
men be
homelessness
like
is a
fucking
choice?
be a man and go get a job. Like, what the freak?
Actually, if you have
Men
certain
are homeless, but why the hell are they sitting on their ass
big
holding a sign?
services-
Yo, put a
Anything
big
helps.
fat
Like,
L in the chat for Dark.
If you have certain,
I'm just saying,
Big
bro.
fat
You
L in the
literally,
chat.
you
I
literally,
feel like
you,
homelessness is different too, because
Wait,
I
so
think
if a woman's homeless, it's also her choice?
Yes, no, it's literally any homeless person, bro. They literally chose that lifestyle. Like, we just saw a homeless person at a gas station. I laughed at them. Like, get up, bro. You're sitting in front of a gas station that has a hired sign in the window. Homelessness is
You
their
understand
choice.
that if there are certain societal
She did point
conditions,
him out.
there is going to be homelessness.
That's
like if
not
you have a
allowed.
certain unemployment rate, and if you have these mental health epidemics that you're having in the United States, where there's so much prescription drugs everywhere, and if you close down all of your mental institutions, like they've done in California, which is just an absolute shithole, by the way, then you're going to have a bunch of homelessness. So there's conditions that actually.
But how do you
create
get out of homelessness? Like, I don't know why we're talking about
Well,
homelessness.
it depends
We're
what
making
you're
an
talking
example.
about.
There's a lot.
I don't know why
if
we're
you're
talking.
talking about a 60-year-old war veteran who's schizophrenic and literally can't get hired anywhere, and then they're just on the street, then no, unfortunately.
Okay,
that
like I
person can't do
said, they
that.
chose that lifestyle.
They
people
chose to be
people
schizophrenic?
struggle with schizophrenia all the time and still have a manageable jobs and still have a good
So
lifestyle.
just to be clear, you're saying that they chose to be schizophrenic?
They chose to be homeless and not to do anything about it.
So if someone has such a severe case of schizophrenia that they cannot get a job, because in order to have a job you have to be somewhat functional at least, you're saying that they still chose that? Because there are people who have like, PTSD is a very serious thing, and
Yes.
there are people who have very, very serious forms of PTSD who are homeless on the street. There's probably 100,000 of them in California, in LA alone. These people have very, very serious conditions, and they get no help from their government that they went to war to try and defend their country from. And you're saying that you laugh at these people and say, "Get up, bro."
Make your life. You have every option to make your
Stop
life
arguing.
better, bro.
Yeah, and
Look,
Talking about
Like,
privilege.
you cannot say I'm wrong.
I mean, look.
Brian, you cannot sit there and say I'm wrong
Oh,
about
well,
that.
no, we can.
Hold on.
A
We
lot of
can.
the
So hold on,
homelessness
look.
in LA, a lot of the homelessness in LA spiked when Ronald Reagan was the president. Because
I don't
he
know
shut
about
down,
non-president
Well, he
shit,
shut
bro.
down so many mental institutions and programs that helped people who needed it, and that's
What do they
where a
result
lot-
to? Instead of literally going somewhere where they can provide help, they resort to taking drugs and make their life a little bit more harder than it has to be. That's how I see homelessness. Like,
I feel
and
like
I don't
for
see why
men
we
it's
brought up
harder
homelessness
too.
when we're talking about abortions and comparing it to trench foot. Where was that taking a
Homeless
turn?
people get trench foot.
It's about negative life outcomes, but I mean, look, to some degree, people have agency over their lives, but typically the circumstances which lead to homelessness, I don't know if it's so much about. I mean, look, people do make choices, and it can lead to certain life outcomes. But a lot of these people, like Jake
Yeah.
said, there's it could be PTSD, there could be drug use, there could be mental illnesses that have led them to certain unfavorable life outcomes.
I worked for the Salvation Army for 2 years in a homeless shelter, and there was one lady that I remember that when she was a little kid, her dad locked her in her house for her whole entire life, and then you can imagine all kinds of terrible things to her. And then she got out, and then it was sort of still happening, and then she had a child that was a product of the father and her. And then this child was like seriously deformed, and they were both homeless. And it was like, some people, it's like, yeah, you have agency, and there are a lot of success stories out there, but I mean, some people are just fucked from the get-go. So
All right, we have two chats here. We have, oh, is it working?
Chromo Jones donated
What the fuck?
$100. The easy way to not have to worry about
Chat,
child support
is there,
to make sure the guy who knocks
echo?
you up doesn't leave.
Wow, Chromo Jones. Yeah. I just think it's interesting. Like, y'all would say to the guy who, like, knocks up a girl and he's got to pay child support for 18 years, you'd say, you shouldn't have done that. Tough luck. Should have not had sex. But, like, you never say that to a woman who's, like,
They just said keep your
considering an
legs
abortion.
They just said keep your legs closed for women, like about abortions and stuff like that.
I know, but you guys would take issue with it.
No, they just said it, and we didn't have no issue with it. We laughed about the comment when it popped up. When
You
it
would take
said
issue with it.
when it said keep your legs closed. Shit, you're right. We should have kept our legs closed. But hey, now
Yo,
we're
Chad,
here.
is there an echo? Is there an echo on the TTS? What's that? Okay, cool. Oh, it's fixed.
Dark Omen 42 donated $100.
Yo, thank you, man.
States represent women for free for child support collection. You go to jail for not paying.
Yep.
If you're dodging it, you're effectively living like you're on the run or only having cash jobs. All cope.
I mean, yeah, there are men who do that. They're like evasive with it. But if you're like a normal guy who's getting like a check, like you're not working under the table, you can evade it. You can try to, like this guy said, you work an under the table job, just cash jobs. Like if you're a guy who's making $100K a year as a software engineer, like good luck evading the inevitable 18 years of child support you're going to have to pay because you hooked up with some girl and she got knocked up and you didn't want, like, you just thought you were having a one night casual encounter. She wants to keep the kid. She's got you for 18 years.
Okay, so wait, you want her to abort the kid?
No, that's not what here's what I think is fair. In any state or country where abortion is legal, men should be able to say, it's called legal paternal surrender. You can kill the kid, I should be able to abandon it. That seems fair.
Yeah, I agree.
In a world, if a woman can't get an abortion, the men can't opt out and they got to pay child support. But the current state of affairs is, no matter what, as the guy, regardless of the abortion laws, whether the woman can nuke your kid, whatever it is, you got to pay. You making money, she goes to the state, you're paying child support. 18 years. If you don't, there's going to be penalties, and eventually they're going to put you in jail. So
men,
It goes for
men
women
basically
too, though. If like say the man took the child or whatever, like say you had a son and you decide to raise the son and you get granted full custody, whatever, the woman still has to pay child support in that instance. So
that's true.
I don't see where.
I agree with you. That is true. However, there's two things here. One, women are much, actually three things. Women are much more likely to get a greater degree of custody. And then in addition to that, just based off the data that we have, I think it's like 90% of child support payments go from men to women. So it's a small minority of women who are paying child support. Actually, four things. There's a bias in the court system that's going to morph. I don't know why you're laughing. There's a bias in the court system that more favorably looks towards women versus men in these sort of situations. And then the fourth thing is, even if the guy is fully within his right to go after the breadwinner woman and get child support, men are just naturally less likely to seek it. And that's the same with alimony too. In the event of a divorce, she's the breadwinner. There is a greater proportion of men who are just going to throw their hands up and be like, I just want out. I don't want your money. Whereas women are going to have a much greater sense of entitlement. Women are going to be like, I feel entitled to this money.
Well, you still have the same position or the same entitlement. You just don't feel like you need to take action into it. That's not a woman's fault if a man doesn't want to take it.
Sure,
he still has
I
a
agree
chance.
with you. It's not a woman's fault, but it's to the woman's benefit if men are less likely to seek the child support or alimony.
Yeah, that's fine, but it's not.
I'm not playing a blame game here.
No, I understand.
I'm just looking at the reality.
I agree with you, and you're right. Even though those are the statistics, it still shows that a man can get child support. Or he
I'm
can
not arguing that.
do that. It's mama's baby, daddy's maybe. So that's usually why the court, goes with the mom, because the mom carried the baby. So it belongs to them and stuff. Sometimes fathers can be like, oh, well, how do I know it's mine? Then you have to go through the paternity test. And then once you discover like, oh, okay, you are the father. Now it's going through the court system to, what do you want to do as a father? Do you want, custody? Do you want to give up your parental rights? Do you want, what do you want to do in that aspect? And then you can move forward from there. But I mean, that's kind of why they favor the mom over the dad, because the mom, it's their baby.
Okay. I mean, you're just arguing my position that there's a bias in the court system.
Yeah, I didn't say that there wasn't.
Okay.
I actually agree with you.
Sure, I agree with you.
But you also were saying it like men don't have the option that women have, and they do have. You said that men throw up their hands and don't go for alimony or don't go for, they're less likely. That's not our fault that they're less likely. That's a man.
That's not my position, though. I'm not saying that it's women's fault.
What are you saying
that's
then?
the case.
What are you saying then?
I'm just looking at outcomes here, right? Because you were like, well, in 10% of cases, the woman's the breadwinner and the guy can get child support. And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. But it's like, we're looking at disproportionality and differences, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you also said that with the court system.
No, but the original conversation here stemmed from so a guy who doesn't want to have a kid for financial reasons, or he doesn't want to be a parent, he doesn't have a say in the matter. He doesn't have a choice.
I said that.
Okay, you have a position on this? You're laughing, so. Okay.
I said that I agree with you on that, though. Like, that was kind of what, going back to mine and his initial discussion about abortion, or about like when a man, because that's what started that whole conversation, was I said that I wouldn't let a man have a final say in every single thing, but I will
Like
let
abortion,
him.
right?
Yeah, like abortion.
Oh, you
or
would
like,
let him have a say?
No, I said I would definitely discuss it with them, because I do
Right,
feel
so he
like,
can have input.
yeah, so because I do
But-
agree with what you said. Like, if a dad told me, like, if I got pregnant and the father told me, like, hey, look, I don't want to have a baby with you. I'm not going to be in this kid's life, and blah, blah, blah. I have all the information I need to say if I want to continue having this baby with him. Now, if he said that and said he's not going to be in the baby's life, but me personally, I don't agree in abortions, then I'm still going to have the baby, but he's not legally. We can set up a legal documentation that says you're legally not responsible financially or
matter.
anything.
It doesn't
whatever.
matter. You can, first off, that wouldn't be legally, the court would throw that out.
For what?
You change, a year later, you change your mind. You're like, fuck, this is hard. I need money. He's making money. Whatever legal agreement you have, the court's going to be like, we're looking out for the best interest of the child. This document you have is unenforceable. Unenforceable. It would not be enforceable. And then secondly, even if you did have this document, if you, in some sort of situation, let's say you don't want to enforce it. You're like, well, it's unenforceable, but like, we agreed to it. I'm not going to go to the court. If you ever try to get any sort of government subsidy, like welfare, EBT,
stuff like
food, they're going to be like, do you have a kid? You're going to say yes. And they're going to be like, okay, we're automatically going to go after the father now. And you can't tell them, no, please don't. I have an agreement. They're like, doesn't matter. If we're going after welfare, if you're filing for welfare, we have to go after the dad and get some sort of money from him. So even if you have that agreement in place, which by the way wouldn't be enforceable at any point, maybe it pisses you off. You're like, fuck you. You're going to pay money to me from now on. If you ever have to file for like any sort of welfare, healthcare, that sort of thing, government healthcare, they're going after the dad. So there's risk there to the man no matter what. Anyways, I do have to move it on. We have